The ATF is threatening to prosecute out-of-business firearms dealers who are complying with the law. Yeah, wait till you hear this one. Stick by and watch this episode of Guns and Gadgets. Hey everybody, welcome back to Guns and Gadgets, the premier source for Second Amendment news. Since we're talking about the ATF again today and how they've just completely gone rogue, I wanted to let everybody know about this new shirt I have in my shop. Link will be down below and probably floating above too. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms should be a convenience store, not a government agency. Literally hot off the press, just got it out of the bag. And then I came and hit record. Kind of worked out perfect since this is an ATF video. I also wanted to thank the sponsor of this video, the USCCA. Join the USCCA. Down below is a link, uscca.com/GNG, where you can get education and training to prepare yourself for what happens before, during, and after you have to utilize one of your tools for self-defense. All right, let's talk about the ATF and how they're trying to pressure out-of-business FFLs to break the law. It's crazy they're just going complete rogue, and a lot of people, I don't know how you're going to feel about it, but a lot of people are saying that they're reverting back to some Obama era policies in an effort to totally undermine President Trump right before the election. Hey, it makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of bureaucrats in every form of government, every agency. But once again, we have a regulatory agency acting like they are Congress and changing laws and how they're enforced. What do I mean? Well, under federal law, 18 U.S.C., Section 923C Charlie, a federal firearms licensee, when they go out of business, have two options regarding their leftover inventory or their stock. Say they have 50 guns left over, or one. You pick a number, doesn't matter. The law is the same. They have the option of transferring those guns to another dealer or transferring them to their own personal collection. It's allowed under law and has been for a very long time. Either way, whatever the disposition is of that firearm, it has to be logged in their bound book, which is the dealer's A&D book, and that tells, upon investigation by an ATF agent, that this gun was taken in the books on this day, was never sold, we went out of business, and it was either transferred to dealer bill or I transferred it to my personal collection. And this is what has the ATF in a tiff, because they, meaning the ATF, they want every single firearms transaction to go through a federally licensed firearms dealer. They also want every firearms transaction to go on a 4473, and they want every single firearms transaction to go through NICS. Okay, think back to Michigan and Alabama. Those two states, GOA is actually suing in those two states because they had exemptions for NICS. Meaning if you had a license or a permit in those states, you could just go buy a gun, and because you've already gone through that background check, you didn't have to go through it again for each individual piece of machinery. Every gun that you bought, you didn't have to go through that again and again and again and again. I'm kind of jealous of that. I don't live in a state where that happens. If I buy 9 guns a week on different days, it's not 9 days in a week, but you know what I mean. If I went every single day and bought a gun, I'd have to go through NICS every single day. Now, once a dealer goes out of business and they take those firearms and transfer them to their personal collections, they're allowed to do whatever any other law-abiding gun owner does with their personal property. Meaning, according to the law, they could sell a piece of their collection or the entire collection as a private owner and not be considered doing business. So they've been able to do that if they so choose. And that has the ATF's panties in a wad. See, the ATF, and I know they're probably going to watch this, maybe they don't understand this, but you aren't elected to Congress. You don't make laws. If you don't like it, guys and gals, run for office. But until then, know your role and shut your mouth.
Come on, man.
Now, GOA is also aware of a couple other situations where some dealers, and this might happen to your FFL, go ask them. Some dealers have 2 federal firearms licenses, an O3 being a dealer, which means they can open and run a gun shop, or O7, which is a manufacturer. And a lot of the people who have now gone to the manufacturer route start as a dealer and thus have both licenses. Now, it's important to know that on a dealer's license, you can deal firearms, but you can't manufacture firearms. But on a manufacturing license, you can deal and manufacture firearms. But what the ATF, and this is from GOA, okay, this is legit information, what the ATF is trying to do right now is for dealers that have dual licenses, they're trying to pressure them to give up that O3 license if they have a manufacturer. Why is that important? Well, because they would have to close the books for that license, and then ATF would get all of the out-of-business information that they want. What firearms went to who, and who has what. They want all of those out-of-business records.
Come on, man.
Now, and that brings us into the new 4473 form, which officially starts November 1st, but it's already being used in many parts of the country because everybody's out of the old 4473. But if you remember the videos I did on that when it was just being talked about, they took the information, like the guns that you're buying that used to be on a different page. It's now up front, up top, so that they could easily record or scan that information and make a de facto gun registry database of who has what and where they are. Now remember, under federal law, the dealer has the option to take those into his personal possession, his own collection, and do what he wants with them. That's the law. ATF can't do jack splat about it. However, there was an internal memo received by GOA that tells a different story. Now, I'll put the memo here on the screen, and you can see it says, important notice, selling firearms after revocation, expiration, or surrender of an FFL. That's your out-of-business licensee. Former federal firearms licensees, FFLs, who continue to sell firearms after the revocation, expiration, or surrender of their license are subject to the same rules as persons who have never been licensed in determining whether they are, quote, engaged in business, end quote, of selling firearms without a license in violation of 18 U.S.C. 922A1A. Accordingly, former licensees who wish to dispose of any remaining business inventory must adhere to the following guidance. Now, it's not about guidance, it's about law. It doesn't matter what the ATF wants or feels, the law drives this ship. The preferred manner of disposition is for the former licensee to arrange for another FFL to purchase the business inventory and other assets of the business, or consign the inventory to another FFL to sell on consignment or at auctions. Well, that's not what the law says. The law says once they take possession of it, they can do whatever any other law-abiding gun owner can do. But the ATF wants to change the law again. Should a former FFL decide against those options, he or she should be aware that future sales, whether from his or her personal firearms collection or otherwise, will be evaluated for a potential violation of 18 U.S.C. 922A1A, just as would occur with a person who had never been licensed. If a former FFL is disposing of business inventory, the fact that no purchases are made after the date of license revocation, expiration, or surrender does not immunize him or her from potential violations of 18 U.S.C. 922A1A. Instead, business inventory acquired through repetitive purchases while licensed are attributed to the former FFL when evaluating whether subsequent sales constitute engaging in the business of dealing in firearms without a license. ATF remains committed to assisting former licensees in complying with federal firearms laws. If you have questions, please contact your local ATF. This is disgusting. They're pressuring people who went out of business to violate the law. Or if they transfer stuff to their own collection like the law says, they're going to prosecute them. Come on, man. All right, I could just keep going and ripping the ATF because we've all had it with them. But what I will say is I will have a link down below to Rob Olson's article here from AmmoLand, and I will have an open dialogue with them like I always do if more information comes through this, and it will. I will have it here on the channel. So please consider subscribing to Guns and Gadgets so that you will stay in the know. And until we see each other again, please be safe, stay vigilant, carry a weapon, grab yourself an ATF should be a convenience store shirt on my link down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.